Hi, Margaret Kimberley here with Chapter 7 of my book, Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents. I'm doing short readings of each chapter, and you can buy the book. If you look below the video, you can see how you can make that happen. So this is Chapter 7, Andrew Jackson, 7th President of the United States, 1829 to 1837 were his years in office. Before Jackson was president, we had a series of slaveholders who claimed they didn't like slavery, or they wished it would end, or they thought it was immoral, but they didn't know how to end it. Jackson was different. He was a slaveholder. He had a large plantation, but he never claimed it was evil. He never claimed it was wrong. And he actively bought and sold human beings before and after he was in office. He did join the American Colonization Society, and he wasn't the only slaveholder to do so. But the purpose of the ACS was to remove free black people from the country and remove a threat to the system of slavery. Jackson is also responsible for the acceleration of the removal of indigenous people from the southern states. The institution of slavery had become more profitable with the invention of the cotton gin. And these people who the founding fathers and their successors didn't break away from Britain just to let an opportunity, excuse me, for this system to become more profitable to pass them by. That meant indigenous people such as the Cherokees and others had to be forced off their lands. White settlers from Virginia, North and South Carolina, Georgia were demanding the expulsion of the original inhabitants in order to grow the plantation economy. The Treaty of Fort Jackson in 1814 forced the indigenous Muskogee tribe of Florida to cede 23 million acres of land. Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act when he was president in 1830, and they were forcibly exiled on the infamous Trail of Tears to be sent west to Oklahoma Territory. So we see that Jackson was the head genocidaire of that time, being a slaveholder, being a man who was committed to and the most active in driving indigenous people from their lands so that slavery could grow. The Georgia state legislature, as I said, all these southern states were pushing for this to happen. The state of Georgia annexed all Cherokee lands and distributed them to whites through a lottery system. Cherokee laws were declared null and void, and Cherokees were no longer permitted to testify against whites in court. Now, I add that the Cherokees and others were slaveholding tribes themselves, but the system at the moment they became inconvenient did away with them, or attempted to do away with them too. And the Supreme Court actually ruled in favor of the government, but Jackson said, John Marshall, speaking of the Supreme Court justice, has rendered his decision, now let him enforce it. But the only enforcement was carried out against the Cherokees and others. He was consistent throughout his life. During the war, it's called the War of 1812, but it didn't all take place in 1812. In 1814, he and his volunteers were stationed in Mobile, Alabama, and he was committed to keeping the British from winning New Orleans. And he issued a proclamation to the free colored inhabitants of Louisiana and promised them money and lands, the same amounts received by white soldiers, 160 acres of land. But Jackson made it clear Mobile or New Orleans may be under attack, and placed in the hands of our enemies, and the Negroes stimulated to insurrection and massacre, and made deluge our frontier in blood. He was afraid that these free people would join up with the British. That's why he did that. And he was honored with the naming of cities: Jackson, Mississippi, Jacksonville, Florida, and numerous other locations, and for his very dubious achievements as the genocidaire of the country. Now, there's something I want to skip ahead to modern history. He was placed on his face on the $20 bill in the 1920s, but fast forward to the 21st century, and in 2015 there was an initiative to put a woman on the face of currency. And Harriet Tubman was the choice of the woman who should be on the $20 bill. Now, I and others have argued that it doesn't honor Harriet Tubman, the woman renowned for freeing herself from slavery and freeing many others, and fighting as a Union operative during the Civil War. All of her sufferings, everything she fought against, was caused by money. And there is an argument to be made that this was no honor at all. Well, it didn't even last that long, because the Obama administration said that she wouldn't replace Jackson on the $20 bill. She would share it with him. So the woman who fought against slavery was going to share this, what some call an honor, with this man who was devoted to protecting slavery. Although it still hasn't happened. There's no Harriet Tubman on the money, and I think that's just as well. So this is our little reading of portions of the chapter on Andrew Jackson. Please buy the book, look below the video, and you can see how you can do that. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.